you will see taxes flowing towards mining companies. They have an incentive because the system will become so big that we need to pay taxes as a community to make sure that Bitcoin will still work. 2024, we saw like the ETFs coming in, we saw like auctions on ETFs, and now 2025, states discussing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I was like, it's so cool to see, because everything that we used to talk about, that it's happening. It's actually happening. Yeah, I think it's necessary for the industry to grow bigger. So I would say a real Bitcoin education company, like for example, Mi Primer Bitcoin, needs to get bigger to see if cycles in the future will be the same, why cycles aren't the way they are. And if we get that now and we can explain that to the youth or to the students, then they can think of, I think, better solutions. If you look at other projects, then you come to the conclusion that it doesn't make sense to not want to save in Bitcoin. Even if you hate Bitcoin, but you're smart in finance, then you should even have like just a little bit, because you need to hedge yourself, because what if you're wrong? So it's always wise to have some Bitcoin from financial risk perspective. I'm highly convinced that there isn't something that is better than Bitcoin at this moment. The industry, like it's growing so fast and so slow at the same time. So if I look at, like, we were in El Salvador like only 2 months ago, It was 2 months ago. But if you look back at it feels like it was like a year ago, but it wasn't.
It actually feels like longer ago, but it was like middle of November, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
That's not long ago. That's like, it gets 3 months in like 2 weeks or something like that. Exactly.
So, like everything moves so fast, and back then, you were still sitting in, I think it was a small town or village, even, where we went to the restaurant and we put like the block clock on top of the balcony so we could see the view with the price going up to 95K or 96K. And we were like, oh damn, this is history in the making, And a month later, the Bitcoin price was at 100K, I think. And in December, we even got the 100K in euros. So yeah, especially when something like that happens, it's the time to put in the work, especially in our field, because we're depending on, it's like the price, it works like a marketing campaign, And then for us, it's very easy to then reach out to schools and be like, hey, this is something that you really need to look into, because it's growing right now and it's growing really fast. And because of the price, they are all like, okay, we need to put in a bit more tempo and come over and give some lectures, and then then we'll start from there.
So I'm currently searching. Oh, I found it actually. I found the picture that I made. Unfortunately, I didn't do the picture with you. I forgot the name of the guy that I made it.
I took a picture of you.
Oh, you were the guy making the picture, right?
Yeah. Because you're standing next to Yuri, right? Exactly.
This is it. Yeah. Yes. This was some moment. Yeah, 90K. And back then it was crazy that we hit 90K, because we went up like 10, 15K or something like that in like a matter of days or something like that. I don't remember the exact thing, but I remember that I was in the plane from Vienna to Canada, and it already went up crazy. And then from Canada again to El Salvador, the price again went up crazy. And then in El Salvador, obviously, we hoped for the 100K in El Salvador to have the party there, but it was unfortunately not as good that we had it in El Salvador, but a few weeks later we hit it then.
Yeah, but like if you think back, it was such that's what most people have. Like the crypto space, it grows so quick, and everything that you do, everything is so fast. And if you don't keep up with the pace, then I think it's also good to not keep up with the pace, because then you can stay sane and see what's actually happening. But it's also fun to keep up with the pace, because then you're really experiencing how fast everything can go. Like, for example, we were discussing, I don't know if you remember still, but we were discussing how cool it would be if there was a possibility that maybe, if in a good scenario, Donald Trump would be president, then we could see something like a Bitcoin strategic reserve, maybe. And then the 20th of January, Donald Trump, the inauguration was done, and a few days later, we see like tons of states. I think right now the number is at 15 states that have looked into bills or set up bills even for strategic Bitcoin reserve. So that feels like so long ago, but everything is moving so quick. But yeah, how have your days been since El Salvador? How was your experience?
Yeah, it's since 1.5 years, or like 1 year and 3 months that I do the podcast now. So, and it's completely unreal, and everything is growing faster than I expected. Everything is going way better than expected. And it's also extremely different to what I was expecting. So I really enjoy it. And there's like this up phases and down phases. In the up phases, I'm like, oh, like everything is running amazing. Like I'm on top of the world. But then there are the down phases of like, oh, like nothing is working and like everything is crashing down. But I think that's like quite normal, with like starting something new. But overall, I'm just amazed every time I look back just a few months, or like half a year. I'm like, oh, that the development of the podcast, the development of the Bitcoin space, the development that we all kind of make in that space is just tremendous. How fast and how great it's going, and that completely organically. Like I didn't had any starting advantage. Like there was no guy that I knew in the Bitcoin space that helped me out, that I knew before. Like everyone is helping me out now is because I got to know them with the podcast. There's not like, oh, like I have an uncle that is like a Larry LaPow or Michael Saylor. Like, I didn't have like something unfair like that. I didn't have any startup experience. I didn't have any capital. I didn't have any investors. I didn't take any credits. Like I just like went in here and like tried to do my best. So from that perspective, it's just unbelievable that it's going that fast and also that good. But yeah, that's that. I think most people that watch this kind of like they get like the development of that. What I'm more interested in is what you are doing currently in Bitcoin, and what you are up to. We talked briefly in El Salvador. I know you're from the Netherlands. You're doing Bitcoin education, but what exactly are you doing? And maybe then later we can go to how you see the Bitcoin world right now.
Yeah. So the short answer is that we do Bitcoin education, and we've been doing it for, I think it's over 4 years right now. It was a while back, like I think it was 2019, when I really thought like, man, everything is so complicated, but it wasn't even complicated. It was just complex. So we needed to digest all the things that are like all the different concepts that are part of Bitcoin technology. And I say specific technology because everybody's always talking only about the coins that move on top of the specific technology that Bitcoin uses, which we also call Bitcoin, or what we also call Bitcoin. But I thought it could be way easier if people just get the concepts explained and then form a new concept with all the different stuff that are like part of Bitcoin. So we started explaining that in 2019, and then people were saying like, oh, you can explain it quite easily. And as you can hear right now, I do that in Dutch because that's my mother tongue. So I can use a lot of analogies that make sense to people. And in English, it's a little bit different and a little bit difficult for me. That's also when we spoke in El Salvador and you were like, yeah, I'm doing an international podcast. And I was like, oh, that's why I was a little bit hesitant, because my English is not as good as my Dutch is. But in Dutch, it makes sense to explain Bitcoin in and with analogies, and I know a lot and can use a lot of analogies that resonate with people. So we started to develop on that idea to describe concepts that people are familiar with. And it got traction. So back in 2021, after the Corona period, we hosted a few lessons for a few universities as well, and we did that online. And then we started to see that there was also like a business possibility. So right now we're educating primary schools. We're going to do that next week. We're educating something that's called MBO, but it's kind of similar to high schools and also universities in the Netherlands. And it's growing slowly but gradually. We're really happy with that right now. Yeah.
I love that. So you're going to actually do like public schools and you educate people there. That's an amazing thing. So that's basically what also El Salvador is doing, but you're doing it on a in Europe. That's amazing. I never heard about. Are you doing that on a regular basis? Do you have like regular classes there, or is it more of like here, there, a month? How is the setup there?
So with one university, we do it on a regular base. So it's called like a keuzevak. I think it's an elective is the English word, and the elective makes sure that we can give guest lectures every quarter, I think, so quarterly. And for the high schools, it depends on like the weeks that they have, because you have similar or different weeks where the teachers have like a study week or something, and then they invite us over. And for the primary schools, it's the same, but everybody is looking into like the development of education right now, because the topic is getting more and more, I think, is gaining more urgency and traction. So all the teachers are looking into like, is this the time to develop education for the students, or do we still need to wait until, for example, the Ministry of Finance will say, hey, we need to give like a little bit a topic about Bitcoin in our financial education offering that we're handing out right now. So I think if we stay and keep moving the way we're doing right now, I think we will be able to develop the first like real education for at least the primary schools and maybe for the high schools. But for universities, there are already minors being made, and these are quite good. And I know a few guys that have developed them as well. But for the other students, I think in the lower ages, like starting from 10 to maybe 22, and especially then the students that we are focusing on, so high schools and primary schools, there was no education for them. So that's why it's very attractive for us to keep pushing right now and make sure that we can develop it in that range and that target audience as well.
Interesting. I love that. By the way, I just saw that I have the same shirt on from last time.
From the photo, yeah.
It's literally the same shirt because I only have one from those. Really good. By the way, your English is really good. Like usually the wrong people say that the English is bad. People that say the English is bad is usually the better English. My English is actually not that good, but people all obviously understand it. So from what I'm understanding is you are now fully all in Bitcoin from the day-to-day that you are doing, or is there anything outside of Bitcoin that you're doing? I don't know, like a fiat job or something like that?
Yeah, so currently I still have to. So I also work at a broker. And of course it's a crypto broker. So I've been doing that for over a year right now. Which is a lot of fun because it also teaches you like the institutional side and more of the business side of let's call it the crypto industry. And also the need for education. Like it makes the concept that we have of the industry, it broadens it. And that's something I will repeat, and I'm repeating it quite often, is like, people need to get the world better And if they get the world better, then they will get Bitcoin better. And especially like we were talking about game theory and systems and incentives and why things are the way they are. And I also had that, for example, with the meme coin hype or with exchanges and their responsibility, their societal responsibility that they have. Like if you're getting new customers, how are you making sure as an exchange that you're not only seeing them as, for example, exit liquidity or just liquidity, but are you also providing them something? Because the reason why exchanges are getting clients, I hope, is also because they want to make sure that these clients will provide themselves with a better future, and the exchange is also a tool to help them with providing that better future. Like Bitcoin is also a tool that helps people to, well, I think, to get a better future. So the responsibility that exchanges and brokers have, yeah, it became a lot more visible for me being internal in such an organization, and it's helping a lot. So yeah.
That's really cool. Also, the time frame is interesting. I think you said 5 years ago you started with educating people. When I remember correctly, 5 years is a long freaking time in Bitcoin. There's a lot of things happening, and I remember even when I came into the space 2020, which is like 4.5 years ago now, so like almost the same time. The educational space was already quite good, but not nearly as good as now. Going back to like 2019, 18, 17, there was all the educational side, and the Bitcoin side was just not as developed as it is now. Now we have so many, even Bitcoin only podcasts. We have educational offerings. We have so many great speakers. We have so many books. Like, it's fascinating how many books there are in Bitcoin once you get to really dive deeper. Like I cannot even read all of the books because there are so many of them. So I think the educational side really developed good. And now it's just like making packages for specific niches. For example, I recently had the former Red Bull CEO of North America on, and he talked about how C-level executives don't have time to watch like 20 hours of podcasts. They need like a very short and comprehensive information that makes sense, makes them interested, and makes them curious to learn more and to really look deeper, because their time is so busy and valuable that they don't want to do it. And they also live in a world where they don't have the problems that other people have. Like the C levels, they are compensated nicely, so they don't experience the inflation as bad as someone else, because they don't have to struggle for their life. They have other problems that they have to solve. They have problems with the company and problems with the balance sheet and stuff like that, and that's why they have to adopt Bitcoin for another reason. But just condensing the information now, educational wise, to different cohorts of people to onboard now, like the masses, I think that's more of the mission now. And I love that you're going to university and going to the public places that are needing those, because you can directly suit the Bitcoin education for the audience there and really make it a nice package. And I think we need this grassroots movement. So I just wanted to say thank you for the work that you're doing, because that's really, really important to have in Bitcoin. I love that.
Yeah, thanks. But it's like you're doing the same thing, right? So you're not only serving the people that are longer in this industry. Like, for example, when I started back in 2016, what you explained is like you didn't have like someone close to in your environment that could like give you a hand and show you everything around. And the thing was, I did, and that wasn't something that I already knew, because I went to an event, and on that event, I see like an old classmate of mine, and I was like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And he's like, "Bro, what the hell are you doing here? Weren't you playing football?" Because I used to play professional football in the Netherlands. And then I was like, yes, but now I dove into Bitcoin and it's like amazing. And he's like, bro, I've been working in this industry since 2013. And you need to do this, and this. So I just checked all the things that were on the list. Like, for example, watch all the videos from Andreas Antonopoulos, buy his books, read all his books. Then after that, I started creating content, because he also told me, like, just start writing. Because if you start writing, then you see like how good you get the picture. And after that, I was like, okay, but now I'm writing and I'm getting the industry better. I need to work in this industry. So then I started to work at a blockchain company. It was a blockchain implementation partner, and we developed all type of solutions, blockchain-based solutions. So then I got a grasp of how the technology works and what businesses could or could not use, and especially the importance of Bitcoin, which still a lot of people do not get yet. So I think it's necessary that we can do that in all different target audiences, and that's why I like to work and see how all different niches in the industry are working together. So there's only one thing that I still wanted to do that was on my list. I was like, okay, I need to be a writer. I needed to be something like in a technical function. So, for example, like a blockchain architect. So, kind of did that. Was more a bit of business development, but also did a little of blockchain architecture. And the last thing was, or one of the things that I also wanted to do was work in an exchange or a broker, just to see how that works. And one of the last things that is on my list is like be like a product manager or something, to really understand how does like a tech product work. I don't think I'm gonna finish that one because it's way, like, Bitcoin is so much, but maybe I'm still gonna do it. But if we can do that and you see all like the different worlds, then it becomes way easier to explain to everybody, whether you're a kid or a CEO in a company, because you can better understand the problems that they have. Yeah.
Really cool. You were a professional football player in the Netherlands. You still playing, or?
Well, yeah. Like it was it was full pro, but it wasn't the first league. I played first league 1 year, but I wasn't like the best guy. I think that's the reason why I jumped over to the crypto space, because sometimes you just feel that you're not in place. So mostly when we had conversations, and there's still one guy, because back in 2016 when we first got into, and I'm saying we because it was like a group. When we got into Bitcoin, it was at like the breakfast table where we were sitting and having breakfast with the teammates, because we were always in search for new opportunities. And then we were like, hey, yeah, let's have a look at Bitcoin. And then we waited. And then at the end of 2016, the price got up again, and then it dipped. And then in 2017, in the beginning, we were like, bro, why didn't we bought like a little piece? So that's how I got into Bitcoin. Like, yeah. So it's thanks to football.
So that's your profile right there.
Oh shit! Yeah. Yeah,
so you're almost worth a full Bitcoin then.
Almost. Yeah, nice. I used to be like. Yeah, I think, what is it? It's saying here, center back. Yeah, I used to be like a defensive midfielder. That's why I played most of my professional games. But yeah.
And you are Suriname. I think we talked about it, right? That you are Netherlands and Suriname. That's super interesting. Did you hear about Maya Bahub, that the police showed up at her doorstep?
Oh no, I didn't. Okay.
I only read the tweet like literally like 10 seconds, I think, but she wrote about that the police showed up in her doorsteps, and what happened there. I will have a podcast actually next week with her and Rahim. I'm really looking forward to the story and how the election is going, because I think the election is quite soon. I think it's like first quarter this year or second quarter this year, somewhere along those lines. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. By the way, that site has as much advertisement as you can have.
Oh yeah. I'm seeing the tweet. I'm reading the tweet right now. Yeah, this morning 2 police officers arrived at my home, summoning me for questioning. Okay, well,
Yeah, that was interesting. Of like, okay, hmm, they they seem to be fearful of her. Otherwise, they would not do it, right? They. I mean, I don't know the full story, and I want to talk with her next week to get the full story of like, okay, what was happening, what did they say they wanted, and why did this happen? Because the first part that we did with her was already with like, she told what they already do, and then we kind of got to the point of what is she fearful that they might do to her, and then the internet connection actually broke down, which was super fun, because we're like, oh, like they are watching what you're saying on podcast, and they turned off the internet connection. I mean, I don't think that had happened, but it was really like at the right moment, all of a sudden the internet broke down, and then we realized like, okay, let's do the second part. Let's just keep that as an end because it was already like 1 hour long. Let's do the second part in like half a year or something like that. But that's super interesting. So you, apart from Suriname, did you grow up in Suriname, or did you have a father or a mother from there? Or?
No, so both my parents are from Suriname. I grew up in the Netherlands actually, but when I was a little kid, we moved to Curaçao, which is like one of the small islands of the ABC Islands. So yeah, and then I think when I was 6, we moved back to the Netherlands, and then I grew up here. So full Surinamese, but didn't grow up in Suriname.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. What do you make of Suriname? Do you think she has a chance to win the election and give something great to the country?
No, this is the discussion that I had, and I'm still having with a lot of Surinamese people. I still have family living there, and my aunt is also there. My nephew still lives there. Like the corruption there, I think I'm not going to say that it's part of the culture, but it's widely accepted. So, and that's, I think it's very weird, because if you talk about solutions, then people will most likely say, oh yeah, well, that's a great solution, but it will probably not work. So that means that like it's so embedded into the society that people are like already, I think, like they gave up. So there needs to be like, I think, a new generation that is like, okay, we're gonna develop a plan, and we're not gonna do it the way politics normally do it, because how it works in politics is somebody has a plan, and that plan that works for 3 years, and then it's not working, and then somebody else is, yeah, but we're gonna do it completely different. And well, okay, maybe we should have long-term vision for like 25 or 50 years, and make sure that we stick to the plan and develop something that can work if we actually stick to it. But I don't think that right now there are people that are willing to have that long term of a vision, which is also logic, because who the hell wants to live a shitty life for a long term vision? So it becomes a really, in my opinion, it becomes a hard question, because everybody wants to have a good life for their kids, but also everybody wants to have a good life for themselves right now. And that's what most people are doing right now. I think in Suriname, if they have the opportunity, they're like, okay, I want a good life for my kids, but I also want to have a good life now. So if I could make sure that I can have a good life now and provide for my kids, then I'd rather choose that solution than give a good life to everybody else's kids and have a shit life right now. So what most people do is they move. They move to a country where the fiat system or the system is a bit better, where they get a better pay. And that's what I think most Surinamese people do, is they move to the Netherlands because they speak the same language, and the education in the Netherlands is just good. So yeah, why wouldn't you? But then all the knowledge stays or leaves the country. And then, for example, if you go back to Suriname, I think it's really hard because you don't understand the culture. You don't understand the problems that they have. It's not like embedded into you. So the solutions that you come up with, it kind of feels like you're the guy that knows it better, or the girl that knows it better, while you don't. So in my opinion, it's a bit hard to get back to Suriname as diaspora and to come with solutions, because we don't experience these problems. Yeah.
I think that's a problem a lot of countries have, where the great talent, if there's a great talent and motivated people, they have basically two choices. Like, do I fight for my own country and spend my life energy on improving that country? Or do I just move to another country and have a way easier life, probably quicker, more success, and can foster the better opportunities around me in the new country, especially if there's a country that is has the same language, which is a major advantage because you want to be able to speak the native language. That is a hard problem to have. Because
these choices are only made if people have the opportunity to make such a choice. Like, if the system is set up in a way that you can have a comfortable life in the country where you're from, then they will probably not make that solution or think of a solution in that category or that type of category. But right now they do. So then it becomes really hard to solve, you know?
That's true. I never thought about moving before I got the income outside of Austria. Right now, I don't have any income out of Austria, like almost no income out of Austria. So I can move wherever I want to move. Like I don't have to be here. Which is like the first time ever last year where I questions of like, is Austria a good place to live? Like, is there other places that are better? And the more I travel, the more I come to the conclusion, like, Austria is actually a quite nice country and probably one of the best countries to live in. If you don't see the EU, if you don't see the tax system, like outside of that, which there are some weird things happening, it's a really good country. Like the water is clean, the food is really good. There's a rich culture here. It's not dangerous. Like it's a quite safe city. There's not a lot happening. you have access to everything that you need. The public transport is good. You can have a car, you can drive around with it really good. So like there's all the things that you basically need, and it's really nice. But there are some frustrating things on the legal side, which I'm hopeful that it changes, but maybe I'm naive and young for believing that. But I came to the conclusion that I want to stay Austria, and want to try to fix it a little bit and try to influence it a little bit. But if the point comes of like, oh, like I cannot do anything here, and it's way better in whatever country, I will move there because I'm not depending on Austria at all. But you're right. Most don't even have that choice. Like most don't even have the choice of like, oh, like I can move somewhere else, or some don't even want that. So it's a hard place to be if you're in a country that you don't know. You want to improve, but you're not sure like how you can even begin to do that. That's it will be really. I'm really looking forward to the interview with Maya next week. It will be fun to talk about the future potential of Suriname. The country is really small, like right. That's like 600,000 people or something like that. It's like half of Vienna. That's it's not a lot of people, I guess.
Yeah, it's such a small country, and a lot of people that are actually Surinamese are living abroad. So. Yeah, I'm just really hoping that things get better because yeah, from what I'm hearing from my family, it's getting really hard for people to make a living and to have like everybody wants to have that's the whole thing. Everybody wants to have like an easy life, a soft life with as little stress as possible. Just being able to pay your bills if you have bills, to do groceries. And then if you think of how this all is happening, because it's still happening, it didn't happen, it's still happening, then we need to think of, okay, all the agreements that are made in the money system and the political system that is set up. And that's when it gets so complicated to think of the right solutions. And that's where I see the responsibility, like a small part of the solution is like getting a better idea of how the world works. And one of these concepts in the world that plays a huge part, in my opinion, is the concept of money and how money works, and especially how it influences your life. And right now we're focusing on the technology below the money and how that works. Because I think in 10 to 15 years, maybe, people will no longer speak about how Bitcoin as a network is functioning. I think that everybody will be like, yeah, it's just functioning. But right now, I think it's so exciting to see how everything works, especially how it influences people, and to see if cycles in the future will be the same, why cycles are the way they are. And if we get that now and we can explain that to the youth or to the students, then they can think of, I think, better solutions. Because also Bitcoin will probably not be the thing that will be here in like 80 or maybe 100 years. There will probably be something different. But for now, I think it's very important that we explain it to the youth and make sure that they can, just see it as like a temporary solution, because nothing lasts forever.
I might disagree with that. I think Bitcoin has the chance of being the end all be all money because it's the first one that's moldable. Like it's the first one that you can change around, and it could make the network effect. I don't know, like how, unless there is something major happening, like an alien species coming and wanting, and they're forcing their currency because they are superior in as a species and forcing their currency on us. With the current technology stack, with the current Earth that we have, I don't see anything. But it's very well possible that we don't see what we cannot see. So I'm aware that there's always a black swan, as like there's always something that you don't see that is coming. If you just think back like 300 years, the things that we are doing now is completely crazy for a person 300 years ago. But at the same time, there are people on Earth today that live like people from 300 years ago. They're like completely outside of everything. There's like small tribes of people that are completely unattached and detached from society, which is super fun that we live in that on the same planet. But I do see the possibility that if Bitcoin gets to be a major store of value in the world, that we can mold it to whatever we need to mold it towards. Like Bitcoin will
but
always.
Then the question is that still Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Like it's probably we probably keep the name, but it's definitely changing. So that's an interesting question of like if you compare the first iPhone to the last iPhone, there's a lot happening, but no, there's actually not that much happening. But the iPhone is not that much. But
no, but if you can say the first smartphone to the last smartphone, like and that's the thing, everything will get better in time, and we've seen like the research where they were using like an AI and a hologram and stuff. When we were little kids, we were thinking about how we used to, or how we would travel the world in the future with like hover cars or something, that you can fly in the air, but it totally doesn't make sense because the infrastructure then gets fucked, because why would you have roads? So it's way smarter to do it like below the city instead of above. So all these ideas are like, I think they will change in the future because for one, all the people have like, or not all the people, people that are trying to develop the world already have a view of where the world needs to go. But we also need to take into account that we have a world right now. So, like, for example, I think the best example is like AI. AI, like, they can do a lot of shit with AI right now. They could. But they also know that if they would do it right now, that it would have so much the effect would be so big. I think it's like the implications, and in the Netherlands we say neveneffecten. So the implications of the implications of the implications, and then it becomes very hard to see where stuff will go. So then it's maybe better to slowly put something into the earth and see how everything is reacting, and then make sure that you have the right research team that can find out, okay, let's make some models and the projections, and then again, do it slowly again. And I think that's also what will happen to like Bitcoin, and is happening right now to Bitcoin. And then eventually there will be something that's kind of similar, but it will also be very different, because fiat, digital fiat, M2 as we call it, it's digital money, but it's not digitally born.
I get what you're saying, because it's like the Bitcoin today is already quite different to the Bitcoin 2010. It's already just 15 years, and it developed. There are some things like time locks and multi-sig and the seed phrases. I think those are all things that I'm not sure about multisig, but seed phrases definitely, and time locks and a bunch of other things that you can now do on the main layer of Bitcoin that were not possible in 2010, and were not necessary in 2010 also. If we already see in 15 years a lot of changes to Bitcoin, or like improvements, what happens in 50 to 100 years towards Bitcoin might be a completely different Bitcoin, but still maybe we call it Bitcoin. So that's a good argument of like, is it still Bitcoin if it's something completely different, or like something that is very molded at that time? But that's kind of the argument of like, that's why TCP/IP is still around, right? We could do something different, but it's still the base layer of like Facebook and all of the apps, and that's kind of my thesis of like Bitcoin is the new base layer of financial systems, and we just build everything on top of it. And the thing is, once you get that base layer, once you get that protocol, and you're building everything on top of it in 50 years, it becomes really, really, really of a high cost for society to change that around in a major way. So we will always mold it. And I think if we stop developing Bitcoin today, it will die out in 10, 15 years, like maximum, like probably sooner than that. Like we have to fix bugs, we have to upgrade it, we have to do things, do the main layer, but we should not do too much to it. But I do think it has the potential to live a very long life because we can mold it, because it is something we can change around. Think about how long gold was money and how bad gold is actually able to be money, because like you cannot send it around. And then we, once gold was not money anymore because we had the issuance of fiat currencies, the advantages of the fiat currencies are now in Bitcoin. Plus we have the advantages of gold. It's kind of the marriage between fiat and gold is now Bitcoin, and the individual advantages of fiat and gold are even improved on Bitcoin. So it's already like such a way better technology than anything else that we currently have. But you're right, there might come something way, way better. I don't see that happening in my lifetime. I don't see that happening anytime soon. And maybe the next better Bitcoin is just a molded or a slightly manipulated Bitcoin version, where we can work on the ecosystem, a little bit on the protocol and on applications and banking systems, because I do think we will have them in the future also, like banking systems and applications that are convenient. But yeah, like that's an interesting discussion. How do you see that?
Yeah, to me, it's like it's inevitable that eventually there will be something that's better. Like what you were discussing before, like you cannot see what you cannot see, like the unknown unknowns, and they will probably be there, because if I look at everything that Bitcoin is doing right now, then I'm like, okay, I've read tons of books and I'm highly convinced that there isn't something that is better than Bitcoin at this moment. But I wasn't that highly convinced 20 years ago or 15 years ago. As a matter of fact, 15 years ago, I didn't even hear about Bitcoin, but it was there. So I think in 80 years, and when we'll see, like when is it to 240, when the last Bitcoin will be mined, then probably
2140.
Yeah, then there will be people that are and have experienced like everything that Bitcoin is doing. They have experienced like all the problems that Bitcoin will bring us as well, because right now we're experiencing the problems only on the financial side. But I think it's too little time to talk about all the problems and the effects that it will have on the world. So that's why I'm thinking like, okay, there will probably something be that we will not see, and that will be a big problem. Like, for example, the privacy thing is something that we're talking about a lot. The minus distribution, like, for example, we've seen that there were, I think, 15 what was it, OFAC sanctions or something, where transactions were flagged. And what if different pools will not take on blocks that have transactions that need to be approved, and then they will move on to another chain? Like, that could be a real big problem. And that's something that we're talking about right now. So imagine in 20, 50 or 60 years, how much problems will occur then. But still, today, if I'm looking at today at Bitcoin, I don't think there's anything better right now. But yeah, the question you have is, how was I looking at the developments? I think there will be like a lot of different products built on top of or built with Bitcoin. Like, it's no coincidence that Michael Saylor with his MicroStrategy changed their name to Strategy, which is quite funny. But there are a lot of people, especially in the tech space, that are seeing it also right now. And at one point, everybody had that aha moment, you know? And if you have that aha moment, then the mind, it becomes like it's like a blank canvas where you can see Bitcoin in everything. But the thing that we discuss is like, do you see Bitcoin then as a tool, and solely as a tool, and where can you find solutions, or where can you find problems that you could use that tool, instead of the other way around? Because that's also a thing. I hate the quote like, Bitcoin solves it. I really hate it. I'm like, okay, let's just focus on Bitcoin, and not like, oh yeah, Bitcoin solves it. No, well, it doesn't. It's also temporarily, but if something is solved temporarily, does it mean that it's solved, or is it just kicking the can forward? And when I die, somebody else will need to kick the can forward as well. And I think that I think we need to look at real solutions that Bitcoin is delivering to us, and also present them then as real solutions, but present the problems as problems. And it's also possible that some problems cannot be solved, because there was one great book, I think, what's his name? The book is about game theory, and I think it's called Finite and Infinite Games. That's the name. Finite and Infinite Games. But then it becomes like a game where we need to make sure that we can keep playing the game of moving the problems forward. But that's also what we're doing right now with the debt system. So then you can ask yourself, like, is that part of life, that we need to have problems that we will need to push forward and somebody else will need to kick that can? Or can we actually solve them? And that's what I think that we are trying to do with Bitcoin, or I hope what we're trying to do. Really long talk. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a super interesting topic for me, because people ask me, okay, like, you're such a hyperbull on Bitcoin, and like, how do you think it can fail? And I usually bring up one thing. That's the only thing that I think where Bitcoin might fail, is if we have more than 3 planets that have different currencies, and we need a currency between the planets. So we are as human beings an interplanetary species. I think Bitcoin will be the sole money of Earth as long as it's just Earth. It's a weird saying, but because the problems that you say, like, they're super valid with the mining pools and the templates that they can put in there, and there are basically just 5 pools, and those 5 pools are actually not 5 pools, they are more like 2 pools, because they kind of work together. But we work on solutions like with Ocean and with solar miners. So like, I think those are things that help prevent the worst case situations, and the incentive of earning money for miners is greater than complying long term with any government lists. So I do think that's a problem that we will actually solve long term. But you're right, currently it is mediocre kind of a problem. We, for example, had once the problem of losing a lot of keys and losing a lot of Bitcoin. With that, we did BIP 39 list, I think it was, with the seed phrases. So we already encountered a lot of problems in Bitcoin, and already worked in solutions. So that was my whole theory of, like, we have a protocol that is moldable, that is changeable, and if something existential happens to Bitcoin, the incentive of the whole network is to fix that thing. With so much money in there and with so much brain power in there, I'm very certain that we can fix it and mold it in a better way. It's the same thing of, like, when there's something interesting in altcoins that is happening, like smart contracts, Bitcoin is just adopting that technology. I kind of see altcoins actually as the perfect test network for Bitcoin. I before I started the podcast, I hated altcoins. Now I kind of like altcoins. I don't have them. I don't use them, but I see them as a great experimental place for what we can do on blockchain technology, and if something really makes sense, we can adopt it for Bitcoin. It's the perfect test network for Bitcoin in the future. So I obviously don't know if I'm right long term, if Bitcoin at some point is getting replaced with something better in that. One thing that I want to raise here is also network effects are so huge with social media apps. We have Facebook, and Facebook is still the largest player in social media, even though it seems like nobody is using it, but it's still the largest player, and there are so many big competitors. And social media apps are so easy to switch. Like you can easily switch from like Facebook to like let's say Instagram, or from Facebook to let's say TikTok or Twitter or something else. And still those social media platforms have such a huge tremendous network effects. Think about YouTube. There's not even a second best video platform out there. Like there's short form video platforms out there with like TikTok, but there's nothing that even comes close to the power, the data set that is YouTube. There's Rumble, I know, there's Nostro, there's Twitter, but they are teeny tiny against YouTube. And then when we see those network effects and those big things of social media apps, think about how hard it is to change money, because all of a sudden there's is an opportunity cost. If you change your money system from like Bitcoin to like whatever comes is the competitor of that, you have the potential of losing everything, your whole financial energy. If you switch a social media app, like there's no cost to that. Like you can literally have 50,000 social media apps on your phone if you have the storage capacity for that. So that's kind of my point. The incentive, once we adopt Bitcoin to a certain extent, and I think we are not there yet. Once we hit that certain extent, the incentive to fix Bitcoin is greater than to replace Bitcoin, unless we have a hard limit with interplanetary currencies where we have multiple planets and we have to have something that works together with different planets. That's kind of the problem that gold ran into, because all of a sudden we have a globalized world, and you cannot send a gold bar from Austria to Netherlands easily, or from Netherlands to Suriname. It's really hard to send that. It's really costly also to send that. That's why we have Bitcoin for that. That's why we had fiat, but fiat had a decentralization problem. Now we have Bitcoin to fix both of them. If that theory makes sense, I just wanted to give it out there.
Yeah, of course. Well, as you know, because you know that I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin, but I'm also looking at like maybe the problems, and especially from like the ethos perspective, like Bitcoin was, and I think it needs to be like, and give people a choice. So with Bitcoin, you have a choice, and you can make sure that you can how do you say it? On and off ramp, get into or get out to something. But what if it gets so big? For example, we had the Facebook example. What I hated about Facebook is that it was the way to contact strangers. But what if I don't want to use Facebook, but I want to use something else? And it's like, no, you need to download Facebook. But yeah, I don't want people to have the feeling that they're like, yeah, but then you need to use Bitcoin. There needs to be a choice, and there need to be other alternatives that are also working. Because if Bitcoin is not more by choice, but is forced, then I don't think Bitcoin is what it needs to be. And it needs to be a choice that is that is experienced by people as the better choice. And I think that's a really hard place to keep. You know, it's like performing on athlete level, constant, and proving that you're the better choice. But you're not applying people to make that choice. And I think with the miners and centralization problems that are maybe occurring, because it's not sure if if that will really be like a bigger problem, then I think we will have like a big problem where you don't really have a choice, because the transactions can be flagged, or they can be not put in the or not accepted in the blocks. And then I think if you need to use a specific template or whatever, then it becomes really hard, So I'm just trying to look at all the different things that I don't like in the development of Bitcoin, because I love it so much and I want it to succeed. In Dutch, I would be better at explaining.
Bitcoiners are the best critics of Bitcoin. I do know that. Like, it's every time I talk with someone that isn't a Bitcoiner and they are trying to attack Bitcoin, I'm very calm, because I know they haven't studied it. If you study Bitcoin long enough, even if you have criticism on it, you better have some Bitcoin. There are people that say like 10% of Bitcoin, like 50% of Bitcoin. Like, if you study Bitcoin and you have understanding of the monetary system, of gold, of like the problem and the whole ecosystem around it, there's no way you give Bitcoin 0% chance, and then there's no way you give Bitcoin a 0% allocation. So if someone criticizes Bitcoin and has 0 Bitcoin, I know his arguments are probably very, very bad. At least I haven't found someone that has good arguments against Bitcoin and has no Bitcoin. Usually the best arguments against Bitcoin are coming from people that have Bitcoin, because they actually studied Bitcoin, which is super fascinating thing to see, that the best critics of Bitcoin are Bitcoiner themselves. That's super interesting.
From like financial risk, if you look at the financial risk approach, like, even if you hate Bitcoin, but you're smart in finance, then you should even have like just a little bit, because, you need to hedge yourself, because what if you're wrong? Then it wouldn't also. So it's always wise to have some Bitcoin from financial risk perspective. But that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, the biggest risk in Bitcoin is not having any Bitcoin.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
that's super interesting.
But how do you look at like the developments? If you look at, like, for example, 2021, I think is when. No, let's begin with 2020, when we saw that like more institutions were getting involved in Bitcoin, and now in 2024 we saw like the ETFs coming in. We saw like options on ETFs, and now 2025, like, states discussing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I was like, and I read the bills and I was like, oh man, these are like so, it's so cool to see, because everything that we used to talk about, that it's happening, it's actually happening.
It's super interesting. And it kind of goes back to my whole thesis is kind of confirming of like, I think Bitcoin is the underlying protocol and everyone else is doing their own little stuff on top of it. So there are people that are hardcore privacy maxis and they don't want to have anything to do with KYC. They don't want to have to do anything with fiat, and they are completely out of the fiat system and doing their Bitcoin thing, with peer-to-peer exchanges, with mixing and all those things. But then there's people that launch meme coins on top of Bitcoin. Then there are people that develop the layers 2 on Bitcoin. Then there are people that put it on the balance sheet. Then there are people that even talk about, then there are people that use Bitcoin as for an election program to get elected. And then they put it on the balance sheet of the country. And it's just seems to be the US being the first mover in that regard. I know Suriname has, Bhutan has Bitcoin, El Salvador has Bitcoin, but in a major way, America would be the first one to do it officially. So that's kind of the whole thesis of mine is kind of playing out in real time. And it's honestly shocking how fast it is going. I'm amazed of like how quick and how good this whole process is doing. And honestly, I didn't thought it's going that quick in Bitcoin. I'm kind of shocked at the level and then the speed and the rate of adoption, and the nation state level is just like crazy for me that we're already there. It's if you look at the adoption cycles, we are now in the beginning of the store of value adoption phase. So it's crazy to see that people already use it as a medium of exchange, because that's like way further down the line. But even the store of value phase is still not even close to be finished. There's like those three S-curve adoptions. The first is like store of value, then medium of exchange, and then unit of account. And it's all like small S-curve adoptions. And the first one is still one that is currently ramping up. So I'm amazed how quick it's actually going. How do you look at that?
Yeah, I wrote an article. I think I was trying to look into it, but I think I know it from the head, like a little bit, about the Bitcoin and crypto adoption in Europe. And I think we saw like a doubling of the adoption in most countries, except for the Netherlands, where we're headed, or I think still staying at 6%. I think we were heading towards 7%. But then the question, of course, is, do they possess Bitcoin, or is it like other digital assets that they are that are owning right now? But eventually, I think that more and more people will have to look into Bitcoin, also because if you look at other projects and you study them, then you come to the conclusion that it doesn't make sense to not want to save in Bitcoin. But yeah, I think that the nation state part is like, it's something that we all foresaw. And just this is a funny one. If you look at the Bitcoin show, it was a conference. I think it was in 2011, and I watched it on YouTube. I'll send it to you, the link. This is something that you need to, everybody that is a Bitcoiner that needs to watch that conference. It's called the Bitcoin Show, and if you search it, I think it only has like 5,000 views or 400. So it's something that you really need to see. And there they were discussing like how Bitcoin should grow already, and the ideas that they had back then. And that's what I like about Bitcoin, is that there was and still is a long-term vision. And I think that's the thing that Bitcoin teaches you. Like, if you have a long-term vision and you stick to the plan, then you can make sure that we can actually solve problems. And I was already thinking of, like, for example, when we'll see the first start where people use Bitcoin as a store of value, then at the end, nation states will depend on it. And in my opinion, we will see taxes flowing towards mining companies, because they have an incentive, because the system will become so big that we need to pay taxes as a community to make sure that Bitcoin will still work. So in my opinion, that is something that we will definitely see in the next 10 to 15 years, that countries are like looking at or trying to develop a strategy where everybody has an incentive to make Bitcoin better, or to make sure that Bitcoin will keep working.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like once Bitcoin gets to a level where it's kind of crucial for society, all of a sudden governments and nation states are trying to protect it and trying to like mine it themselves and like run maybe full nodes themselves to like protect the decentralization of it against other nation states.
Exactly.
And this whole game theory, that's a whole nother point of like, oh, like once we come to that, it gets crazy, scary, fast, the adoption.
But then again, because if you think of like all the wars that are currently going on, and I'm not talking about the physical wars, but more like the digital wars that are going on, like cables being cut off in oceans and people being tapped. Like, you'll see that in Bitcoin as well. Especially, and I think that if nation states adopt Bitcoin, then that will also be like a huge problem. Like, how will you protect your country? And that is something that I think Bitcoiners are already, because I'm forgetting the name, but a discussion that occurred already. Like, then it becomes way more important to protect Bitcoin in a way that we've never thought about before. Because it's so easy right now to see hackers doing stuff. But what is it when the physical infrastructure depends on it as well in a country? So yeah, just some questions, and there will probably be someone that is like, "Oh, this moron, what is he talking about?" in the comments later. But there are just I'm thinking of like tons of scenarios where Bitcoin becomes big and the things that we need to solve. And I'm hoping that because there are a lot of smart people, and I love to read, for example, books and articles that Adam van Weerdem is writing, and Andreas Antonopoulos, that come up with like such cool stuff. But then when you read it, it blows your mind, and then you're also like thinking of all the new things that could happen. But yeah, I'm babbling.
That's super. I would not call it babbling. Even like I never heard the word babbling, so I'm not sure what babbling is.
Yeah, I think it's like he's talking gibberish in a way that doesn't make sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense for me. Honestly, it's really, really interesting because I do sometimes get the criticism of having only extreme bulls on my podcast, which is just not true, because I had some. I even had a gold bug on the show who had altcoins and who had only like 5-10% allocation to Bitcoin and had most of it gold and altcoins and stuff like that. So I definitely had people on that were not fully into Bitcoin and hyperbulls. And he brought up a lot of things against Bitcoin that he thinks will go wrong. But it's interesting to still have those views on. But it's just so hard to find good critics of Bitcoin, because if you really study Bitcoin hard, you kind of get to be a really hyper bull, especially for your life. Like all the things that we are talking about where Bitcoin is going wrong, we cannot even really describe what's going wrong there. Because when we think about, okay, maybe there's a better Bitcoin, but there's nothing that shows that currently. Like we cannot point towards like a small thing that's like, okay, this might replace Bitcoin. There's nothing that I can like, or like this altcoin might actually be better. We can only feel like, okay, like if we have multi-planetary species, or if there's some black swan that by definition we don't know about comes and is a problem that's so big, then it comes Bitcoin. So like, I think to that point, it's like just so hard to see Bitcoin fail, and that's why we get in this hyperbull thing. So I do like when there is some questions coming up and challenges coming up inside of Bitcoin. I just don't want to invite people on the podcast that don't understand Bitcoin. That's the only thing, and it's hard to find people that are raising a lot of questions on Bitcoin and still understanding. Most of them are actually developers. Like most of the people that I meet that are really critical of the developments of Bitcoin are usually, and still understand Bitcoin and still have a lot of Bitcoin. Those are usually developers that worked on Bitcoin on the main chain. Those are usually the best critics of Bitcoin. Maybe just because I don't understand what they're saying.
Yeah. I tried to listen to a few. I think the you know Sjors Provost. He's like he's a Dutch Bitcoin core developer. Yeah, he has a nice podcast. I think it's called Bitcoin Explained, and I think he's doing the podcast with Adam van Weerdem, and he used to write, or maybe he's still writing for Bitcoin Magazine, and he wrote an amazing book, the Genesis book, where you.
I think I heard about that book.
Yeah. Oh, love it. The way Aaron writes, he just makes like such a nice story of Bitcoin, and he gives you like small rabbit holes every time, and then you're like, okay, but I cannot dive into it right now. So then you're reading a lot, but then eventually when you finish the book, you have like tons of other research that you can do. So that's why I really love the way he's writing. But go and if you would like Bitcoin Explained, because it's in English, I think, and then they explain tons of bits and how the technology behind Bitcoin actually works from a developer's perspective. So that's really cool to do. But then again, we also need to make sure that people understand it. And that's why I think that Bitcoiners could use more analogies. And that's why it's fun to visit. Like when we went to El Salvador, I still have the bracelet. When we went to the education meetup, where there was also like a talk about how to use analogies and make sure that people understand it. But I think we also could make it more visual for people so they can see concepts.
Absolutely. I just want to show something because it just happened right when we were on the podcast. I saw it when I was searching the video on YouTube. I just hit the 14,000 on YouTube.
Oh, how cool.
I still celebrate every 1,000 step because it's so amazing for me to see that. So but I just wanted to show that. I don't do it. Like I don't do any subscriber specials anymore. I don't do that. I sometimes make a post about it. But once you get over 10,000, you feel stupid and silly if you still celebrate publicly every 1,000 step. But I still do that.
Yeah, but why would you feel stupid about it?
I don't know. It feels like once you get over 1,000, like first you celebrate every 100 steps from like 100 to 1,000. Then from 1,000 to 10,000, you celebrate all the 1,000 steps. And then from 1,000 to, let's say 100,000, you only celebrate the 10,000 steps. But it's like, I have to wait so long now to celebrate things.
Yeah, but this is worth celebrating, man. Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
and it's growing I think the line is nice. Slowly, but going up. I think because you were doing like one episode a day, right?
Yeah, I did now the last 365 days. So that's literally 1 year. And as you can see, I had 1 year ago 500 followers, and now 1 year later I'm approaching the 15,000. So I'm now at 14,000.
Yeah, really cool. Consistency.
Absolutely consistency, and I think I started around here somewhere with like every day. So like somewhere here in February actually I started. We can see it. Let's do since the starting of the podcast. This was the 28th of 2023. This was, why is it not working? Like this. This was the starting of the podcast. So it's now a year and 72 days old. And so when I started, I had 200 subscribers. So it was an account where I already had subscribers from a previous venture of the channel.
Looks like the bull market 2017.
No, I didn't even talk about Bitcoin. I talked about stocks, and I talked about.
No, I'm saying the growth.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, like it's been crazy to witness the growth, and it's absolutely abnormal to witness it. But yeah, I just wanted to once celebrate it in the episode. Maybe I'll do that now. Like if I come in the episode over the 5,000 over 1,000 step, I do it in the episode. Really cool. We are already over 1 hour. It really flew by today, the talk. Is there anything else that you want to like to share with us before we come to the end routine?
I think we spoke about a lot of things. We didn't spoke about a lot of education, but yeah, I think it's important to mention that we in the space need to keep educating people. And we did a podcast in the Netherlands in Dutch about how to start a conversation about Bitcoin and how not to start a conversation about Bitcoin. So I think it's important that people need to think of how they start a conversation about Bitcoin, because I think Bitcoin is a thing that people need to choose, and it doesn't need to be forced on people. So that's something that I like to do in real life, and something that I also want to give to other people. Like, try to think of a solution in which you don't force Bitcoin on people, but that they choose Bitcoin. Yeah, that's it.
That's a powerful one, yeah. Like, and I also experienced that it does not work forcing things on forcing Bitcoin on people. It kind of pushes them more away from Bitcoin. It's not the intent of Bitcoin. Yeah, really cool. We have one question for each and every one of my guests, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin? I guess playing football.
I would say playing football, but I can also do like fun, they call it like the brain training tricks, I can do like this and then.
What is that?
So you can try to do it. Yeah. Like keep your thumb up and point towards your thumb with your other finger and then switch them.
It's not that easy.
It's pretty hard to do. So I can do stuff like that easily. Yeah, try to practice that one. So that's a thing.
Yeah, also like those are kind of hard.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh yeah, like you can do that also. Interesting. For the people that that just listening, might be weird to listen to that. But yeah, like we try to do weird things with our fingers. Thank you so much for being on, Raoul. We have an end routine podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest is. And the previous guest asked you the question, what's a Bitcoin company which is most needed right now?
It's a good question. Ooh, yeah, then I would say probably, yeah, because that's why I'm in the field, like, and I'm doing it for over 4 years right now, and it's. I think it will. Yeah, I think it's necessary for the industry to grow bigger. So I would say a real Bitcoin education company, like for example, Mi Primer Bitcoin, needs to get bigger. So I would say education, but of course, like, yeah, from what perspective are we looking at that question? It's a good question though, and there's not one answer to, but because I mean, like the education field, and I would say education because I think it's very important because it will teach you about all the companies that are necessary. So maybe that's the answer.
I love that. Yeah, and there's so many. It's always hard if like there's a question of like so many different possibilities, but it's also really good because it makes you think and it's like kind of forces you to choose the best one that fits for you, for what you are thinking about. Yeah, really cool. Thank you so much for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Well, yeah, you can find me at CryptoTakkies. So yeah, it's a little bit slang in the Netherlands, but CryptoTakkies is the platform. We have an Instagram page, TikTok, LinkedIn. And if you want to search me on LinkedIn, you can also find me there. And I also have a Telegram, but it's kind of private, my Telegram. So I'm not sharing that one over here.
Yeah, that's great. Unfortunately, my Telegram, I promote it now because there are so many spams and accounts going on with other Telegram channels that are not mine that kind of scam people out of the money. So my Telegram is always the same handle as the Twitter handle, as the same handle as on YouTube, the same handle on it. Like I have the same handle everywhere, basically. Same. So the Telegram is, it's kind of frustrating now because there are really good scammers that misuse Robin Seyr. And even if you search Robin Seyr on Telegram, I try to delete them, but they keep coming up. So there's always like more Robin Seyrs coming up than one. And you're like, which Robin are you? Like, why are you making so many accounts? Like if I meet someone at a conference, like, which one are you? Yeah, thank you so much, Raoul, for taking the time. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening to us and joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye bye.